Hi, I'm Ultra Freyson of the Wally the Wolfpack. I got myself a nice little hot cup of hot chocolate, and we're gonna go over today's little topic: is honoring the past while enjoying the present. So, without further ado, go ahead and grab yourself a nice cup of hot chocolate and enjoy this fall weather with me. I need to do some editing one of these days and actually make like a little theme song or something, but someday we'll figure that out. But this will work for now. So, it's been a couple months since I did my last video, which is fine. Been really busy. Hidden Days, Pagan Nights, building the community and stuff like that. So, Hidden Days, Pagan Nights was a very big success, by the way. Thank you, Nordic Daughter, for coming out and playing with us and enjoying our time. We had the Northern Lights come out during the bonfire that we had. That was actually really, really awesome. So, it was actually a great success overall. You know, we got some feedback what we could do better for next year, and you know what they lost to see for next year, and things we did good for this year, and so on and so forth. But you know, I could talk about that all day, but that's kind of not the reason why we did this, right? So today's topic is honoring the past while enjoying the present, right? So why am I talking about this? Well, as heathens, we got to honor the past. We honor the past. We honor those who lived in the past. We do it through traditions, offerings, wearing some of the regalia or rocket Mjolnirs, you know, depending on what traditions you have or anything like that. Now, just looking around, make sure my dogs ain't doing anything crazy. But why this is important? Because one, we gotta understand why we actually honor the past in the first place, right? So if we're talking about honoring the Nordic past or even just like the heathen past, we understand holidays like Yule and of course Mabon and things like that, and how they did certain bloats and why they did is because you know it helped them survive the actual cold winters, the ancient feudal age that they lived in, and all these kind of things. And we gotta understand that the past was actually a pretty tough time to live in, right? The Viking Age, the Bronze Age, Iron Age, you know, whatever age you want to throw in there, is significantly a lot physically demanding and mentally demanding than what we would understand it now. Not saying this time frame is not really hard or anything, or it's easy, but understanding that we have to understand where they came from, and we also going to understand the sacrifices that they made, so we can understand that as a guideline. Use their experiences as a guideline to actually help us learn and thrive for today. So, one thing too is we often tend to romanticize the past, right? For example, the Viking Age. Now, that's more of a trend, if anything. Maybe not more a trend, but some people say it is, some people say it's not. Honoring the holidays, the bloats, the gods, that's not necessarily a trend itself. But the actual regalia like the Viking Age and the ancient world and stuff, yeah, that could be somewhat of a trend. Which, you know, I get that. And I understand it has an appeal because of media, such as Vikings, Marvel, or even video games and stuff like that. The books that we read too, it could be a little more romanticized. And it's easy to do though, because if we actually look at the past and through media outlets and stuff like that too, we see that they obviously portray like a sense of community, a sense of belonging, and it seems, you know, it makes it appealing to actually live there. But of course, understanding where we live at now, how we have AC, heat, warm showers, cars, guns, you know, things like that to kind of make things a little easier compared to, say, you know, starting a fire every morning, dunking yourself in an icy cold river to bathe. And if you had to defend your home, you had to use a sword and not a gun, you know, but things like that, right? But of course, I guess one of the things we got to talk about is like how we actually romanticize it too. As much as we like to romanticize the past, we also have to live in today. We can romanticize the past and understand how it can actually be viewed in such a way. We look at where our ancestors come from. Like I'm kind of talking in circles right now, but bear with me on that. There is some harm in actually romanticizing the past. For example, if you've known that guy who you went to high school with, who's like, "Oh man, remember that time that I made that touchdown and we won the game?" It's like, "Yeah, Bill, that was 15 years ago. Why is that the only thing you talk about?" Like, Or, for example, my case, my first deployment, guys I've deployed with, it's like, oh, I remember 2010 and da 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 da. I'm like, yeah, dude, that was like 15 years ago, dude. Like, or 14 years ago. Like, come on. Like, you gotta live in the now. So, why do we actually romanticize the past? So that's the question, is why we tend to long for the past. We tend to long for something like the Viking Age and medieval age. We have a longing for it in a lot of times. Or even if you watch old westerns, you long for like cowboy days and stuff like that. And I think why we have a fantasy of saying wanting to live in the past, such as the Viking Age and stuff like that, is where we're at in a modern sense. We have this sense that we may have felt like we were born in the wrong time or the wrong generation, which that could be true, that could be debatable, but we just gotta understand that we're born in the time that we're born in. That's all that really is to it. But people have a romanticized view of it is because we don't really like where we're currently at. You can believe that in social economics, political situations, modern day, anything really. How you view things, social media, the current world. You look at watch the news and see how bad the world is. In reality, it only paints somewhat of a picture. It doesn't really paint the whole picture, really. So, we also gotta understand that as much as we try to not look through the lens of the world through an actual phone, we probably shouldn't. Even though we do often. Guilty. I'm guilty of that myself. All the YouTube or the media that we all consume and stuff like that. It's kind of hard not to do that. It's kind of hard not to seeing the world of the current state that it's in and not want to escape and go into the past, like say the Viking Age, medieval, cowboy times, and stuff like that. Pick your poison of what place you would want to escape to. But and the thing is though too is we also understand that people's disdain for the modern world as we see it now is our generation's challenge, right? Now, if we actually ask anyone today, they probably have a strong disdain for the modern world, and they view that through social economic issues, political issues, social media, the news of the world is today, so on and so forth. And we also got to understand that this is our generation's time to actually overcome these challenges. Because we also got to understand, too, our ancestors had the same issues. Now, it may not be one for one the same issues. However, they had their own struggles, such as we have our own struggles of today. Our ancestors had to pay the piper for the struggles that they have made and the challenges they had to overcome to actually make the next generation live better than what they had to live. So, for example, let's say that getting meat, for example. If you look at the Viking Age, well, they had to raise the stock, raise the animals, and they had to raise the animals, and eventually they had to harvest the animals, right? And they tried to do it in the most humane way possible. But, that doesn't always happen. Now, don't get me wrong, I have some livestock I raise. I got some goats and I got some rabbits that I raise too. And there's nothing wrong with actually doing the same things that our ancestors did to actually understand not only where they came from, but it's also more of a self-reliance thing. That's more a reason why I do it. It's more because I kind of like to do things myself more in that line, but you don't have to do that either, right? But I think there's also a fine line where you actually have to live in the present, right? Because, for example, here in Alaska, it gets cold. Shocker, right? Anyways, I think this place would be a lot harder to live in if there wasn't an AC or heating units, or even like a wood stove like I got, something like that. It'd be a lot harder compared to being in the lower 48s, where even in like without being AC or heating units or even fireplaces that you could actually own. So understand that they didn't necessarily have the luxury that we would have today. And if you were to go back in time to the Viking Age and you try to show them a car, for example, or let alone a fireplace, a gas one, or even just a wood stove, anything like that, a boiler to heat up your whole house, they'd probably hop on that real quick if they could. So, but the thing though too is, we also gotta understand that we have to live in it now because we are having our personal struggles and social economic struggles and political struggles that we have now. And I'm not trying to dig into those too much. This is our time to actually address those set issues and actually live in this moment so we can actually make it better for the next generation. We don't want to be too far in the past that we're not living in the present, or let alone enjoying it. As in, listen to my goat scream and all this stuff, right? So it's almost to the point where if we keep living in the past, we're not moving either way forward. Let me explain here in a second. We can't be stuck in the past to the point where heathenry does not adapt. It needs to adapt. It needs to move forward with the current times. Now, don't get me wrong, does it have to adopt every social, political, or everything you see on the news? Like, no, it doesn't have to do that. It doesn't really have to do that. Because you got to think, though, trying to practice heathenry in the modern age, depending on where you're at, any part of the world where you're being, like, for example, if you live in Australia, celebrating Yule's going to be a little weird. Because it's going to be kind of hard to kind of celebrate Yule in the southern hemisphere where it's actually somewhere there in the winter and it's cold for us up here. But you can try and figure it out how that would actually apply to you if you live in Australia. Not that I don't think I have anyone that lives in Australia that watches this, but you catch my drift. But also I think we don't necessarily have to do a lot of things that they did back then because, well, they had the means to do it, and also we have the means to not do it as well. So we got to live in the present. We have to live in the current now, but also, fortunately, due to just how the economy is, this, that, and the other, and how the current world is, how we connect with people is a lot different than it was back then. Or if you live in the Viking Age, or even just the Old West, the only company you really had, or community you had, was in your village or your town or something like that. So, it was probably easier back then to have everyone think one single way. Probably until like the Christian time frame. Then once the Christianization of everything, that probably changed a lot of stuff. Now we also have that challenge of today is trying to connect all of heathenries, all the heathens and all the pagans. We're trying to connect them nowadays, and that's a different struggle that we have to have. But we have to live today to actually win that struggle over for the next generation, so they could actually have something to go off of. Because you really think about it, ever since like the 50s and the 60s and probably even the 70s, they've been trying to reconnect the heathens and the pagans, and we're still fighting that battle that really hasn't changed all that much since the 50s and 60s. Now, granted, the groups and the names and all that has changed. However, that struggle is still there. The struggle of gaining a community and to find a place that anyone belongs in, is still very much prevalent. It has not been won yet. Granted, I don't think it ever will be, but it's an ongoing fight. But it is one of the things where we have to live in the present and actually try to make better for the next generation. We have to make heathenry and paganism better for the next generation. So, but also one thing too, we talk about modernizing too, is, well, we got to use the tools that we have at our hands. For example, social media. Now, I have my qualms with social media just as much as the next guy. Before I get into it, I'm going to take a sip. But understand this. Social media, just like anything else, is a tool. It's a tool to connect. It's a tool to talk to people. Do I think social media is very much implemented very incorrectly? I would say absolutely yes, it is. But understand that as we modernize, we have different tools than our ancestors did back then. We honor the ancestors by the bloats that they've had, because those bloats are what they used to connect people back in the day. Now, we still use those bloats because that's part of it. We're still connected to the past when we actually do our bloats, our holidays, our offerings, and stuff like that. We're still connected to the past that way. And we should always be connected to the past. Let's not get too crazy and think we shouldn't be connected to the past. But we have modern technology, being social media and stuff, and and maybe that one day it'll just go away forever. But of course, we will actually relearn how to do those things, because humans are very resilient and tough creatures when given the opportunity. But keep that in mind. utilizing the modern tools and such. Now, one thing too, compared to us in the Viking Age or any of the olden times of whatever tool you want to put, our societal norms have definitely changed quite a bit. You know, I think you can put two and two together on that one real quick, right? But we also got to understand that we don't necessarily need a, you know, copy one for one of what the Vikings did or what some of the ancient world did, right? Apparently how they treated people of like the LGBT community and or even people of just outside your circle kind of stuff. You know, we'll like outlawing people. They used to kill outlaws and stuff. We obviously we can't do those things anymore. Those are clearly illegal, and you know, I would say some of those things would be probably for good reason, actually, if not all of them. But what else you gotta understand too is our community is a lot different, but not different at the same time compared to our ancestors. They're still our neighbors. They're still people that believe the same ways that we believe in. So we also understand that, yeah, you know, people are different, but they're not. If that makes any sense. We also got to understand that we got to use the modern tools to solve modern problems. Hi, Freya. Yeah, it's my dog. I know. You trying to get some camera time? Yeah, I know. That's my phone. But anyways. But one thing too is we also got to understand that as we connect to the past as well, we also got to understand that what would our ancestors say now if they were to see the state of heathenry as a whole? Going back to the Viking Age. Actually, let's go to the part where everyone turned to Christianity and was still trying to grasp onto their pagan and heathen roots. If they saw us today trying to reclaim what we were doing now, they'd probably be blown away by it. They probably would be. They'd probably be pretty blown away by the fact that their old ways, that the ways that they grew up in, never truly died. I want to make sure my dog's ain't running and doing nothing dumb. But they'd be blown away by the fact that despite everything, despite Christianity's best efforts, our way of life was not killed off. Nor could it be killed off, for example. But, you know, and we're coming back. You know, heathenism is coming back with a vengeance. And of course, you know, we're kind of in the pagan renaissance, I like to call it. But I know it's kind of, you know, it's not, you know, like 5 or so years ago where it just kept kind of going like this. I think we're kind of more doing this now. But, you know, we're still in an incline. I think we're kind of slowing down, which is fine. That's kind of just how that kind of goes. It's a pendulum swing of things. But I think they would be oddly surprised, outside of technology aspects and, you know, some of the social norms that we would have today, but they'd actually be pleasantly surprised at the fact that the way of life that the heathens and pagans had was still preserved enough to actually make a comeback. And of course, I'm sure they'd be shocked by some aspects of history, but, you know, neither here nor there. But we also got to remember that we got to honor the past. Let's not be stuck in it. We got to live for now and enjoy the future that we have now. Because I know everyone has a doom and gloom kind of thing about it, especially you, Freya. You kind of have a doom and gloom thing about things. Yes, you do, Freya, because you don't get enough attention. I know. This dog gets all the attention, especially right now. I know you're such a cute little dog. You're such a cute little dog. But anyways. But we got to live in the now to make better for tomorrow. And that's pretty much that. I guess in that closing statement, I would say honor the old ways, enjoy the present, and stay a heathen.